what it is. Health kitchen is, we it's a little bit of everything in this area, and we organized and we sued the city. We went to court and we won the case with the help of Columbia University, who did the environmental impact statement.
Hello, and welcome to Building Leadership Community Podcast. I'm your host, Dora Mendez. I am the founder and CEO of Coach Dora LLC. Our guests will be entrepreneurs, small business owners, and community leaders that drive social impact. It can be lonely at the top, but it doesn't have to be. In our premiere episode, we interview the leader I most admire. Let me tell you a little bit about her before I pass the mic to her. Let me tell you a little bit about my mother, Zenaida Mendez. I'm trying not to get emotional. Zenaida's impact transcends accolades and awards. It resonates deeply within the vibrant tapestry of New York City and far beyond. Zenaida was born of Dominican heritage. She has not only broken barriers and shattered stereotypes. As the first Dominican American woman to chair the steering committee on the local Manhattan Community Board for In Hell's Kitchen, in addition to her groundbreaking local leadership, Zenaida has left an indelible mark on the broader landscape of women's rights advocacy. As the first Dominican woman to serve on the inaugural Bias Crime Task Force at New York City Commission of Human Rights during the Mayor David Dinkins administration. Zenaida's visionary leadership extends beyond borders. In 2000, as founder and board president of the National Dominican Women's Caucus, she has galvanized Latinas and women of Dominican descent to advocate for gender equity and social justice. Her dedication to intersectional feminism is further evident in her role as first director of racial diversity programs at the National Organization for Women. I want to share something more recent. In recognition of her outstanding contribution to diversity and community empowerment, Zenaida was awarded in 2022 and 2022 with the renowned Jewel Ryan White Award for Cultural Diversity by the National Alliance of Community Media. Her impact reverberates in community media work too. For the past 18 years, Zenaida has been at Manhattan Neighborhood Network, MNN.org, and is currently the director of MNN's at El Barrio Firehouse as the executive producer, uplifting the narratives of Black and Indigenous people of color and the LGBTQAI+ individuals while amplifying the voices of marginalized communities. So, as her eldest daughter, or her firstborn daughter, I don't like to say oldest anymore because I don't want to consider myself old. Now a mother myself, I have witnessed firsthand the transformative power of Zenaida's courageous and compassionate leadership. I can't believe I got through all of that without crying.
Well, thank you, Dora. I'm trying also to hold my tears. Thank you for a wonderful introduction. Oh my God. Remind me so many years of being, trying to make some impact in the world that we live in.
So here's our first conversation prompt. I think that our listeners and viewers would really like to hear a little bit more about your leadership journey.
Well, what can I tell you? When I did my internship from John Jay College, I did my internship in housing conservation coordinators here in Health Kitchen, and I worked as the spring in ACC, and when I finished my internship, John Glenn, who was the executive director, asked me if I wanted to stay and work with them. It was and I was like, wow, sure. And that's where my journey uh, started. It's not like I planned it or anything. I was already involved in in the building, the complex where I live. I was very involved with the tenant association, very involved with the Head Start program that we also have here as a parents. But that was really wonderful. So, and so I started organizing tenants in health kitchen and small businesses. And then the city council at that time recommended me for the community board. And it was wonderful also because it was a group of us, Tom Duane and others leaders who, Ruth Khan. It was a, very diverse group that went into the community board together. And we aligned together and we, sort of went and talked about what was needed in this community because we already saw what was coming to Health Kitchen. Ed Catch already um, said that he wanted to renew Times Square, and the proposal that he had was not very good for us in terms that it was four massive towers that were going to block the sun or cast a shadow in 9th Avenue, 10th Avenue, 11th Avenue, and that was going to be a problem. So we organized, with the theater, people in the theater, those beautiful theater that we have today, they would have been gone. And then we uh, formed a coalition called Clinton Coalition of Concern. And like I said, it was a lot of Latinos, it's Anglo, Irish. What it is, Health Kitchen is, it's a little bit of everything in this area. And we organized and we sued the city. We went to court and we won the case with the help of Columbia University, who did the environmental impact statement. And that was also with, ACC. I mean, they still here in the community helping tenants. There was one of their plan was also to sell about 20 buildings. They were city owned walk-up story building. And, that's where, those were the units that were affordable in the community. We all the new buildings that were done. We also had an impact in Manhattan Plaza because a developer had abandoned that complex. And then somebody else took it over, and we were very integral making sure they went to artists and low income people and senior. It's a beautiful complex where actors and actresses and people in the arts, if they are not working for 6 months because they're not in a play or in a movie, they can just pay very little money for their apartment. And when they're successful, they can move and leave it to somebody else who is starting in the business. So it was a lot of transformation that was done in Hell's Kitchen. And that's in 1986, when David Lincoln became Manhattan Borough President, also, without me knowing, the people were like sort of watching what I was doing. I was called and asked if I wanted to join his team, a community in the community unit of the Manhattan Borough President office.
And then you moved to with David Dinkins, who became the first African American mayor of the city of New York. You moved with him to the mayor's office, and then from there you moved to working for Congress member Charles B. Rangel. And so you sort of moved up through government ranks, and then, from what I recall, witnessing all of this, then you moved up through from city, state, federal, and then you moved into the nonprofit world and having an impact on the national level. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
well, yes, between once when David Lincoln lost the second terms, I went to work with Ana Lope, a leader in Queens, in Corona, Queens, in the after school program. Then I have already a relationship with West Harlem Environmental Action in Harlem with Peggy Shepard. So Peggy Shepard got a grant to work in environmental justice that impacted our community and was a lead poison prevention program. And she asked me if I wanted to lead that process. So it was like between going from not-for-profit and from West Harlem Environmental Action, which that's when Ofelia Rodriguez also called me and said, well, Congressman Rango, and I'm mentioning all these names because we have to understand that we don't do it alone. There are people that are helping you as you move up. So Ophelia called me, said, well, Congressman Rango is looking for a liaison for, to the community. They had never been a Dominican with that position in that office, and he had the largest Dominican population, at that time. So therefore, and so he had already interviewed the people. I went to our interview. It was very interesting because my interview with Congressman Rango was at 7:30 in the morning. He usually did that to see if you were really committed to this job, because so when I arrived to the office at 7:15, 7:25, something like that, he said, Miss Mendez, wow, you are here. So, this conceit notion that we're always late or not going to show up because, who's interviewing anybody at that time? But he did that on a Monday where he had to fly to Washington about 10 a.m. So he did that before he flew to DC. And so that's, and that's between all that, I also met, Ana Victoria Lamarche and other women in the Dominican community. We were very concerned about the role that we were playing in the United States and New York City in particular, where we had a large population. The women were very involved in what was going on in the Dominican Republic, politically. And also there was Club Deportivo. So Ana Victoria called me and said, you know what? Can we need to organize the women to be active here, to get involved in the community board, to be interested in, what's going on in the hospital, what's going on in the school. And we met, we had a meeting in my house, we had a meeting in Ana Victoria. So a group of 7 or 8 of us got together and said, well, let's do the Dominican Women Caucus. And, at that time was the Black Caucus, the Latino Caucus. So that was like, so, and we in 1991, so we founded the organization in New York City, and, with the help also with City College. Silvio Torres Ayam and other people help us to be able to meet there. For 7, 8 years, we did a big International Women's Day celebration where we included everyone. I mean, it was like wonderful and to recognize people. We opened an office up in 181st Street. We got a grant for the New York Women's Foundation. So it was, all this was happening at the same time. In the meantime, I was going to school. I had my 3 kids. So it was, to this day, people ask, how do you do it? I just did it. I mean, definitely with the help of your father, who always, we had an agreement that he was going to, he wanted to have kids. And I was like, well, okay, so we're going to have kids, but you're going to have to help. And he did.
Yes, my father, who's now dearly departed. So that leads to the next conversation prop, which is about community, because you said you don't go it alone, because being a leader can be isolating and it can be lonely at the top. But one of the things that fascinates me about you is that you were always able to do so in community, in collaboration. And so, can you share, you know, how you managed that, why community is so important to leadership?
Well, it is I mean, I do it, and I know most leaders do it because, not because of what's going on in our own life, but because we see what's going around us. So we working with it in community. because I mean, it's without the rest of the people who are affected by whatever issue that is you're working on, is you cannot move. You know, you need the rest of the people alone, and always there are people that come to you or get together and say, well, we need to pick up the garbage, or the lights went off in the streets. How do we do that? And like people might know that I'm at the community board. How did the community board you call to make sure that the street lighting is on, if the garbage is not picked up on time. So this little thing, and just talking New York. What I love about New York, and I love the health kitchen in the West Side. I live in the East Side for a little while too. People are very friendly. This is a very community minded community, family friendly. And once you have children in the school, then you have no, I mean, you have to work in community. The kids, they get friendly, the parents get together. And so it's a very unique situation.
So tell us a little bit more about um, building a leadership community on the national level.
Well, um, at the national level, I guess, people who are, like I said, someone like Peggy Shepard, who already do environmental just at the national level, will mention who were working with her. And then I met Olga Vives, who was the vice president of the National Organization for Women, also, and the same thing. They needed someone to organize the 2004 Women March in Washington, and I was hired to be one of the organizers of that, and there was the director of diversity and inclusion. So I traveled all over the United States, where there were chapter in Seattle, Washington, in Louisiana, you name it. So I have a pretty good idea how the United States work in those terms. I worked for 3 months in Florida, also organizing there, getting the women out to vote. That was a great experience. It was fantastic. And then I came back to New York City in 2006. Again, Lily Cariño, who been like my godmother, my fairy godmother in all this endeavor from the very beginning, who I was in the board of Manhattan Neighborhood Network, and I had a television program, Hablando con Zenaida Mendez. And I left. Then I came in 2006. They called me. They said, "Oh, we had an interview about 10 people, and we would like you to come back to New York and work with us." And I was working in Washington D.C. right now, and I came because I said, "Well, okay, I will give it a chance," not thinking that I was going to get the job because I really was happy in D.C. right now. But when I went to the interview, Dan Coughlin, who was the president CEO at that time, it was like we knew each other from another life. He had been in Haiti for 3 years, working as a journalist. He knew Dominican Republic. So it was like and it was really continue my national activism, because Poble as the television is about community, and it's about giving voice to the voiceless. So and a couple of days later, they called me and said, "Well, you got the job." And I said, "Uh oh." And I was in charge of community affairs for M&A.
And now you're the director of the Barrio Firehouse Community Media Center for MNN.
Yeah, that was a process. We, in 2007, in 2007, we bought the firehouse, our old firehouse from El Museo del Barrio. We raised the money to renovate that building. And then Iris Morales was the first director, and she had already committed only to be there for 3 years because she's a writer. She was writing a book. In that process, she was also doing another documentary. And I went through the process because I was already ready to move on to another position that was offered to me in Hunter College. And then, Dan said, "Well, why don't you try to, they encouraged me to apply to be the director of Barrio Firehouse, which I love because I have worked in that community. I was the liaison to Community Board 11 when I worked for the Manhattan Board of Presidents. So I love, all my friends were there, Yolanda Sanchez, all the old timers were there still.
So, community media now is really how you help lead. Uh, I love what you said about giving voice to the voiceless. And so, community media is really how you help amplify the voices of women, BIPOC, LGBTQ, and other marginalized communities to really help amplify their voice. And so, for that, um, you received a national award for. And so I want to share, I would love for you to share one piece of advice to the next generation of leaders, um, or something that you would have liked to have known early on in your career, um, that you might want to share with my listeners and viewers.
Well, you see, I didn't plan any of this, so I just went with the flow. And what helped me, I think, I always like politics, and I always read about community, and I always was in touch with what's going on because that came from my parents. My parents was always involved, and we talk about what was going on, so that helped me. I think it's critical to continue your education no matter what, especially women. So continue the education is a key to everything. And find out. I did an exercise when I was in college. One of my professors said, walk at your block and write down everything you see. And when I did that exercise, I realized that every day walking to the subway, there were organizations in my blood that I never saw it. I never noticed that. So if we do that, and for the next generation, it is critical that they get involved. It is critical, especially the new generation of Latinos in particular, we don't have enough representation. And I'm not talking about elected official only, commissioners, a medical doctor, director of hospital. We need people in every sphere. It is important.
So continuing education is key because that is one of the that's something that you clearly imparted to me. Continuous being a lifelong learner, and also I think when you say get involved, I think what you mean is be that leader, and it doesn't necessarily mean elected official, but it just means leading and being in places of decision making and institutions that have impact on your community.
Definitely also be able to serve. We don't have that tradition of serving voluntarily.
So thank you, Zenaida, my mom, for joining the Building Leadership Community Podcast. I can't believe I made it through without crying. I cried a little bit, but I want to also share with our listeners and viewers that I'm the oldest of three. Well, I like to say firstborn now because I don't want to be consider myself old. I'm also the only daughter who has made you a grandmother and abuela. So you're an amazing leader, mom and abuela to our two children. And so I want to remind everyone, if you like what you're hearing here, remember to like, share, and subscribe at Coach Dora M on YouTube and Insta. And you can find us at www.coachdoramendez.com. Zenaida, Mom, can you tell our listeners and viewers how they can get in touch with you or follow you and support the work that you're doing at the National Dominican Women's Caucus?
Oh, definitely. We are in all the platform. We are in Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, where we do most of our posting. We also have our website, ndwcaucus.org.
Twitter, now X.
Yes.
So here you have it from Zenaida Mendez. Thank you so much for being here. Her great piece of advice is to be a lifelong learner. Continuously educating yourself is key to successful leadership. Is really the key. It's something that she's instilled in me, where we continuously are learning and improvement and leading with social impact. So thank you so much for all that you do. And thank you. Love you.
You've been listening to Building Leadership Community. Watch on YouTube at Coach Dora M. Listen wherever you get your podcasts. Follow me on LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube at Coach Dora M. Visit me on the web at CoachDoraMendez.com. Hosted by me, Dora Mendez. Produced by Dora Mendez and Dylan Rogers. Graphics, editing, and sound mixing by Dylan Rogers.